next from the author of Alcohol in Space, also the CEO of Explore Mars, Carberry, to tell us more about what's on this bar.
Thank you. And I apologize, my voice is beginning to go, and there was a technical snafu with my presentation, but I'm going to wing it. So thank you, Jane, for mentioning the bar in space, very important. And this may seem like a trivial issue, it really isn't. Truly isn't. This has been part of human culture from the very beginning, to provide context. From the very start of human beings, human civilization, we have intentionally fermented alcohol. Many scientists believe that the need for alcohol played a larger role in agricultural technology than the need for food. So it truly has played a hand-in-hand role in the development of civilization, but through this time, it's also played a critical role in religion, in social gatherings, in diplomacy, and this sounds like a cliche, but in medicine. For most of human history, alcohol has been one of the most beneficial things, the most healthy things you could consume because you could not trust the water. Anybody going on a long ocean voyage needed to have beer or whiskey or rum. That wasn't just so the crews could get inebriated. This was healthy because water supplies you could get sick with. So when you added alcohol to the water or brought the beer, that would keep you well. But even more recently, it's played a critical role in camaraderie as well with crews on ocean voyages. When Shackleton, everybody knows about Shackleton with whiskey in Antarctica. But prior to his famous mission, on his Nimrod mission, he had a crew of 16. He brought 25 cases of scotch, 12 cases of sherry, and I think 6 cases of some other spirit I'm forgetting without my slides. And so, you know, Shackleton said if he didn't have some self-control, he'd be a first-class drunk. By today's standards, he was absolutely a first-class drunk. But regardless, it has also played a role in science fiction as well. I think everybody here has seen Star Trek or Star Wars, you know, with 10 Forward or the Cantina Bar. I know that there are going to be some stars from the Orville coming tomorrow. Boy, is there a lot of alcohol on the Orville. But science fiction writers always assumed that alcohol would be there because this is part of human culture. You know, whether you like it or not, for the benefit or, you know, it's definitely had a dark side, but it's also played a beneficial role. But it's one of these inevitabilities of humanity. Alcohol is going to go with them and already has. People talk about, oh, we can never bring alcohol into space, but alcohol has been in space from day one. Early on, they just smuggled it as a gag. Back on Apollo 8, 3 bottles of brandy, I believe I'm remembering the right alcoholic beverage, went up for their holiday meals. As you remember, Apollo 8 went around the moon around Christmas 1968, and Deke Slayton kind of stowed away, kind of put some bottles of sherry in their meals as a joke. He didn't expect them to drink it. But Frank Borman, who was the mission commander, went ballistic, thinking that if anybody had any of that alcohol and something went wrong with the mission, they would blame the booze. And so Jim Lovell, who was also on board, thought he was overreacting by a lot. But eventually, Jim Lovell actually made some profit off of it. He sold that bottle a number of years later for about just shy of $18,000 for one of the only 3 bottles of sherry to go around, brandy to go around the moon. But just a few months later, somebody did drink alcohol in space. And this is something that was predicted by Jules Verne in 1865, when he was hypothesizing about growing grapevines on the moon. And I might add, probably one of the first times that space agriculture was actually proposed, you know, back in 1865. Well, in 1969, Buzz Aldrin actually drank wine on the surface of the moon. This was part of a communion ceremony they arranged with the Webster Presbyterian Church in Houston. He brought a small bottle of sacramental wine, a goblet which was provided to him by the church, and he describes pouring the wine as it goes down in the 1/6G. And of course, this was going to be part of his public statements, but Deke Slayton told him not to do it as part of his public statements because just 6 months earlier on that same Apollo 8 flight, they got a lot of pushback from famous atheists, complaining that they were saying a prayer, in public with government dollars when they were going around the moon. So Deke Slayton was terrified that what would they do if all of a sudden Buzz said a prayer and drank alcohol on the surface of the moon. So, but this has been part of the, they've been contemplating places, to have alcohol officially many other times as well. Skylab was supposed to have wine, but that got scuttled because it became public that they were going to have wine on Skylab, but also they tested it on the Vomit Comet, and when the smell of the sherry, and it was sherry that decided to send up, mixed with the natural aroma on the Vomit Comet, you can understand it didn't go very well. But since then, there has been a constant stream of alcohol going into space. The Russians and the Americans have been smuggling up mostly cognac. People always think, oh, there must be a lot of vodka in space, but it's been cognac. There are many reasons for this that, I haven't heard a definitive reason, but some people say because cognac's a drink for special occasions. Every day you're in space is a special occasion. I believe that. Another reason would be Yuri Gagarin may have actually brought up cognac, and anybody who knows the Russian space program know they are very much into superstition and follow Yuri Gagarin's steps to a T. That includes Yuri Gagarin actually when he was going on the bus to the launch pad. He realized nature was calling, so the bus stopped halfway to the launch pad. He got out of the bus, unzipped his spacesuit, and relieved himself on the back tire of the bus. Every crew since then have actually simulated or actually done that when they're going to the launch pad, in the Russian space program. However, what really inspired me to write this book was the dozens of companies who are actually working on this right now. It started off more as a joke, thinking maybe I might write an interesting, amusing article about could you make wine on Mars? What would it taste like? What would the terroir, or the Marswar, as you might say, taste like? Would it taste salty? Would it taste rusty? But over time, I realized I kept finding all these companies that were doing space experiments. Ardbeg, Scottish whiskey company, sent up the first whiskey aging experiment in 2011, came down in 2014. And they found there was a definite difference between the aging in space and the sample on the ground. This may have been because they got shaken all the hell, and so they didn't take that into account. But the end product was not very good tasting. Apparently, they said it tasted a little bit fishy and rubbery, which is not exactly what the qualities you want in your scotch. Soon thereafter, Suntory, the Japanese whiskey maker, also sent up an experiment. One is returned, one is still up there. They're very closed-lipped, but they want to find out if the space environment mellows their product. So hopefully we'll get the results from them fairly soon. But beer companies as well are also looking at this, as well as champagne companies. And I'm going to show you a video in a second, but Maison Mumm, champagne company, wants to send up the first champagne bottle into space, and they made an agreement with Axiom just a few weeks ago in Paris, announcing that they will be sending up their special space champagne bottle, into space next year. One of the big problems with champagne or beer, however, is carbonation. Carbonation is not very pleasant in space. I think most of you probably know this, but of course on Earth, carbonation goes to the surface, disperses into the atmosphere, doesn't do that in space, or at least in microgravity. In microgravity, it all goes to the center and a ball starts expanding, and it does that in your stomach. And so astronauts have reported stomach cramps and wet burps, once again, not something you want from your product. So beer companies like Vostok Beer in Australia, as well as Maison Mumm, are trying to overcome this. But other beer companies are also trying to figure out if they can grow barley and other products, crops. Budweiser sent up 4 barley experiments. And I think this is one of the most exciting things, whether you like Budweiser or not. They are directly investing in technologies relevant for, sustainable humanity in space. When companies like Budweiser or all these other companies are investing in these technologies, they're essential for sustainability in space. I think that's exciting when you get non-traditional players like that, and so many more are coming on board. So I think when you look at it, pretty much all the things you need to manufacture alcohol in space pretty much reflect all the needs you need for humans as well, agriculture, all these different technologies. So I think this goes well beyond whether you want to drink in space. I think it's an exciting time when you have all these different enterprises, all these different industries entering into space exploration. But I know I'm just about out of time, but I wanted to show you a video. There'll be a documentary version of this book coming out next year. And you notice this one's a little heavy on the champagne because we showed it at an event for Maison Mum in Paris, so it's a little slanted to the champagne side, but I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you. Yeah. Alcohol has been part of human culture from the very beginning.
Culture is what makes a society. We have a solution. We made only 2 prototypes, very much alike. When the 2 prototypes failed, we completed it.
Let's send east to space and brew it. It worked, but what didn't work was not finding the rocket for 28 days. So that's how it all came about, Sam. It was bonkers, man. It was such a short period of time I had to work with.
I kind of love Elon Musk. Musk is a nice example of a culture that wants a hero or a villain more than they want an ordinary human being doing good work.
This is actually getting serious. A bottle that gives you the ability to share something, serve it in a very playful way.
Ça y est, on a une expérience qui est fabuleuse, qui n'est absolument pas reproductible sur Terre.
Ça fait pour moi, c'était de déguster, c'était avec un petit zéro, des flateurs, comme vous avez le vin tapisse tout votre palais. Et en plus, on a une sensation que j'avais connue, c'est le croquant de bulles. Il a fallu percer les bulles, claquer les bulles, puisque physiquement, il a fallu exploser les bulles pour avoir le liquide. Et c'était une expérience vraiment unique.
Jules Verne actually hypothesized bringing grapevines with them and growing vines on the moon, thinking that the ardent sunshine on the moon would create really wonderful wine vintages. This was the first time they were contemplating agriculture on another planet. This dream of Jules Verne would come true, at least having wine on the moon 104 years later, in 1969, when Apollo 11 landed and Buzz Aldrin actually consumed wine on the surface of the moon.
This isn't a bonus. This isn't a nice to have. This is what it means to be human.
If we can allow astronauts to be not only machines, but to be people, not only surviving entities, but people, to create, even for a few minutes, a society of humans outside of Earth, then this is precious.
Thank you, and this will be premiered at the Humans to Mars Summit in Washington, D.C. next year. By all means, come. Selling books outside. I should be here tomorrow, but hope you'll buy it. Thank you very much.